what we need is the 10 products
viable uses
that actually will make a difference.
Thank you very much for joining us, Mark, on What Can It Do. I mean, I've been kind of following you, and I've kind of met you throughout the many years that I've been in the hemp industry. And out of all the people that are working on different technologies and different products in the hemp industry, you're definitely working in the fields that I'm most interested in, like high technologies and material science and everything, which like CBD is a really great product, and all the cannabinoids are really great, and they're going to be very beneficial going forward. But kind of the longer run for hemp and for cannabis in general is going to be material science. I mean, it's going to take a lot more time, and we'll kind of go over things like that. So just kind of before we get really into it, for those of you that, or for those that don't know you, could you kind of give a little brief intro to who you are, kind of how you got into the hemp industry? And
Yeah, you bet. So thanks for having me, Aidan. I really appreciate it, and I've enjoyed working with you over the years. So I'm a chemical engineer, 35 years experience doing a lot of different things.
Wow.
And I'm part of a farm family in northern New York. We're north of Syracuse, beautiful country, just absolutely phenomenal. So you put the two together, and that's how we got into hemp. My company, PreProcess, I have a great business partner, Christina, and we have stuff on the West Coast and on the East Coast. And she does a lot of stuff on the West Coast. I do a lot of stuff on the East Coast. But we've been into a lot of entrepreneurial efforts. So what we see over the years is an opportunity. So biofuels 15 years ago, and then we got into different mining and critical materials development. And then we saw that the hemp was emerging, and hemp's an interesting raw material. It really has the ability to be a fast turnover, renewable resource that has a lot of properties that a chemical engineer can make use of. And if you look at the cannabidiol, which has been the big driver, I mean, that's a chemical engineer's candy shop. You're doing grinding, and you're doing sizing, and you're doing extraction, and you're doing distillation. I mean, that's basically a chemical engineering curriculum. So we got into it, and we like to understand top to bottom, right? So we grow, we process, we manufacture, and we're very supportive of the cannabidiol and whatnot. But with the two types it grows, and with being from northern New York, and the farming community up there is more row cropping. It's not the vegetable guys like in Western New York or
not horticultural.
Right, exactly. So we've done both, and it just depends what you want to do and how you want to fit it in. So our little company, we create other companies. We do different things. We'll either do big projects, or we'll develop some technology, or we'll create investment opportunities. And we've been pretty good at it. We've been on the boards of 3 or 4 different companies. We've been executives at some companies. We've run our own company for 10 years now that develops other companies. We sold one, did okay, that type of thing. So that's what we are.
Cool. So kind of your goal with PreProcess Inc. to an extent is not only just creating the product, but also kind of understanding the whole supply chain so that you can take that product to market. Because I think a lot of people, when they get into making products, they just focus on the prototype, and they build the prototype, but then scaling it up is already a big issue. And then also developing the supply chain and making sure you have a supply chain to sustain that product development is very challenging.
Absolutely. Our bigger niche is actually scaling up and commercializing, right? Okay. So we like having our own ideas, and hemp has a lot of good ideas, but there's a lot of idea people, and idea folks, the early researchers, great ideas, great things to bring to market, but bringing it to market is really a whole different skill, and that's where we really live. We live on that side. So
absolutely. If you were to kind of touch on some things that maybe shortcomings people have when they try to bring like a product to you to try to scale it up and build the supply chain? Like, what's usually the things that people kind of overlook before they get into that they really need to know about?
Yeah, the time it takes and the details you have to really pay attention to. Seemingly simple things on the bench are not that simple at a large scale. And then we also have to respect all the different aspects that go into the whole supply chain. You have to be environmentally responsible. You have to run safe and very stable systems. You have to have quality control. You have to have analytical testing. Testing is kind of everything. If you don't have testing and a characteristic that you can test, you really can't then know which way to go. So that's kind of the basics people overlook. One thing that's frustrating is sometimes folks will come with, oh, I've got this idea and I did this on the bench and I got this result. Okay, where's the study that validates that the result is statistically valid? Oh, no. Well, we so that's a lot of people don't realize that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's it's quite fascinating. So so you kind of touched on like how you got into the hemp industry because you used to be in farming, and so it was kind of the best of both worlds, right? So we obviously, as we said, like cannabinoids are great, but really material science is where it's at. So when it comes to hemp, what about the hemp makes it better for material science than other plants or other materials out there? Like, what are the desired effects and traits?
Yeah, it's interesting. Hemp has four buckets, if you will, of types of material, right? So you've got the terpene cannabidiol or cannabinoid extracts. All right, so that's one bucket. So you can make a product set out of that bucket. You've got the grain, which you can make foods and pressed oils out of. So that's another bucket. Then you've got the fiber, which is very strong, and it's the strongest natural fiber around. And then you've got the herd, and both the fiber and the herd have a very open structure. So if you look at the fiber, even though it's strong, it has a lot of for lack of a better term, it has a lot of airspace. So if you get
like very porous.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to say porous because that's not really the right term, but yeah, it's the right concept. So with that, you're able to make use of that surface area that already exists, and then when you do certain things to it, you can make use of that surface. So one thing we do is we turn the fiber into a carbon, and when you turn it into a carbon and then you expand it, right, or you activate it, right? So activated carbon is very common, but activated hemp carbon has the ability to have other chemicals added to it, and you can make an active particle, and that's very important to have a substrate to carbon, such that you can dope or put other chemicals on it that you can then functionally create a product, and that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Absolutely interesting. So I mean, it sounds. I mean, from my knowledge base, it sounds a lot like graphene. Although, I mean, it's not. We know it's not exactly the same as graphene. It's just, I mean, it's made out of carbon, whereas graphene is made out of graphite, typically. So, how does it kind of compare to things like that? And does it have the same, like, in terms of products you can manufacture? Does it have sort of the same ability that something like graphene has? Like,
yeah, we've got to be careful. So let's make sure we're on the same, so folks looking at this are on the same basis. Carbon can be amorphous, which means it's just all jumbled, right? Or it can be structured, okay? And that means there's defined layers, there's a defined structure of the atoms, right? Okay, so like a diamond is really structured, and that's just carbon, all right? And charcoal is not. I mean, charcoal is amorphous. So we're really in more of the amorphous side of things. Okay, graphene is actually graphite, which is structured.
Mm-hmm.
So it's carbon that's been structured due to pressure and temperature in the earth. You take graphite and then you exfoliate it. Basically, if you ever had one of those, I like baklava, right? So it uses phyllo dough, right? So if you peel apart all the layers of the phyllo dough on a baklava, that's kind of what each little layer of the phyllo dough is. That's what graphene is.
Yeah.
And then graphite is the baklava itself,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of the way you got to think about it.
Okay.
Whereas amorphous carbon is like a bowl of oatmeal. You know, it's just all kind of messed
Bunch
up.
of
You
little
can't
flakes.
peel a layer back.
Yeah.
Right. A little flakes. So the trick is to use for graphene. Graphene is going to have absolutely fantastic properties for all the things that have been advertised. The trick is to use a natural material, and if you can push it towards having some similar properties so it behaves like something that you want, and then economically there's a trade-off, right? Graphene, to exfoliate graphene, it's expensive.
Yeah.
If you can get 50 or 60% of the way there using a natural material that you do some tricks to, and that's what we're doing is we're doing some tricks to the carbon. So some standard tricks have been going on for ages, right? Any of the carbon companies will tell you is activating carbon, just increasing the higher surface area.
Yeah.
The other tricks is reacting it with other chemicals so that you can mimic some of the properties that you might want to get out of the more advantageous, but then also more expensive graphene. So that's the thing to think about.
Gotcha. Interesting. So yeah, so essentially you have like the flakes versus the sheets, like because I know there was graphene that was like growing on a copper plate. There was like about the size of a playing card, whereas they also have like just flakes, which I actually worked in a battery plant a few years ago. And one of the things I found interesting was that a lot of the activated carbon was coming from like coconut shells, like pistachio shells, and random things like that. And I wouldn't have ever thought of it. I would have thought that it would have been just all mined material. But it's fascinating to kind of see what goes into our electronics. And so, kind of on that note, to further into this field of electronics and everything, what kinds of applications have you tested, or do you potentially see like the hemp fibers being used for?
Yeah. So on the bench, again, just at a small scale.
Yeah.
You know, we've made some batteries with using the hemp carbon and some of the tricks that we've done on the anode side. So remember, a battery is a cathode and an anode, and you know most lithium batteries, I think almost all lithium batteries have some carbon in them, right? And most of them are carbon anodes, and then there's even some carbon on the cathode side, but that's a whole battery discussion. But and of course there's new technologies where people are saying, oh, we're getting away from carbon anodes and all, but basically the bottom line is carbon is going to be a player, right? And then so if you take the cathode out of it and you just say I'm going to use whatever, one of the 4 major lithium chemistries for cathodes, and then you substitute the hemp carbon anode, it gets interesting. I mean, we're not there yet. I mean, I've been telling people this for 2 years. I mean, it's like playing guitar, right? So it's kind of easy to learn 3 chords and strum along at a campfire. It's a whole different story to kind of play lead guitar in front of a big audience, right?
Yeah.
We're back at the campfire 3-chord thing, right?
Gotcha.
To make it commercial, we have to be able to play lead guitar in front of a big audience.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work that does that, but you also learn things on the way, right? So for instance, we did some doping. Doping is what you do to a material when you add another minor material to it,
now,
right? So
to clarify, is doping like when you'll dope like silicon chips or whatever, silicon wafers, so that they can hold more electrons or hold less electrons and such? Okay.
Yeah. So if you take a transition metal, take iron, okay, and if you take some hemp carbon and you mix it with some iron solutions, right? You can modify some of the things you're seeing go on with just the carbon itself. And the trick is to, not iron's not the only one. I mean, you could do
Yeah.
nickel, you could do other things,
Mm-hmm.
transition metals. So we've been playing with different doping materials to see what we get, right? Can I get the voltage up? Can I get the charge density up? You know, you have to find the right combination. And there's other people working on this stuff.
Yeah,
So it's really good. There's a couple of fantastic people out there with some great patents. And as more and more people get into this, right, there's going to be more and more knowledge, and people will be advancing the technology. But what's really great about hemp, everybody's going, way up, but we got carbon all over the place. Well, let's hemp can be grown in the United States. I don't know that we grow a lot of coconuts, right?
Gotcha.
And coconuts are where a lot of the carbon comes from. That would be compete. And of course, we have graphite. You mine the graphite. That's really the stuff you want for the and I mean, most of the stuff comes from mining of graphite. But I mean, we've worked mining. I love mining, right? But people understand mining. But mining, to be environmentally responsible, you have to deal with the tails, right? You have to deal with all the other stuff or the gang. And in some places, if you could do a naturally derived row crop that is renewable and happens to help rejuvenate the soil and helps pull the carbon out of the atmosphere, blah, 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 all the good stuff. I mean, if you could get a market for carbon that wouldn't replace graphite, but could augment it. But then what it does is you keep the mines going. There's no big issue with the mines, but as things grow, you get 10% of the carbon in the world coming from hemp. All of a sudden, you've got 1 million, 2 million acres of row crop hemp. New opportunities for farmers. It's made in the United States, and it's good for the environment. So the one thing that a lot of people I talk to in the hemp world are not realizing is we have to have a market to pull. The demand has to grow the demand for the material, right? So what we've been trying to do is not only that, we're doing other things. We take carbon is just one example. We're working on 4 different things, so we can get into some of those. But really, people have to realize it's not if you grow it, they will come. It's if I have a market. Then they will buy it. So anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. So essentially, I mean, definitely, there's probably some other benefits kind of around hemp and why it's really good for us in the United States. But really, it kind of comes down to, we can grow this material here. We can help farmers. It's more environmentally sustainable than maybe mining might be, depending on the mining practices used. But other than that, and then maybe like the aspects that the fiber isn't quite as dense as other fibers for if you're making the flakes. Other than that, like why is I mean, for me, I see kind of hemp as like really one of the reasons it's taking off is because it's new. Right. I mean, it's like nobody's really conquered the industry in the United States, whereas other industries have already been conquered. But other than that, why do you think hemp is like? I mean, obviously the legalization matter, but why do you think hemp is kind of a drive forward, like a good potential, if those don't already cover it?
It's opportunity, right? I mean, let's face it. We need to get something that has a higher value or can connect from an agricultural base to the high-tech base, so that there's that opportunity for row crop rotation, so that folks can have a new cash or revenue stream on farms. I mean, let's face it, right? Soybeans, I mean, you saw what's happened with soybeans. If China decides to stop buying soybeans, it gets tough to be a soybean farmer, right? And then corn, corn with the ethanol and so the more high value we can connect. And that's why we're trying to make the jump. And it's a hard jump from taking an ag product and turn it into a high-tech thing, right? So, a couple of other materials that we're trying to make out of it is, the auto industry in Europe has been using non-wovens made out of hemp for the insulation behind the carpet and behind the body panels, right? Okay. So we've been trying to make not only the hard panels, right, the hemp fiber reinforced resins, thermoset resins, right, but we've also been trying to make the non-wovens insulating mat, and that's a pretty straightforward deal. But the problem with that is the supply chains are so established, and that's good materials, good very good products on the market. Now, it takes a long time to kind of get an auto company to say, oh yeah, okay, that sounds good, I'll give that a try. Why don't you send me some samples? Okay, then it has to test performance. Then they have to go, okay, is it sustainable? And let's face it, if I'm building 500,000 cars a year and I commit to making door panel insulation with hemp, I have to make sure that that hemp is going to be there when I need it, right? So it's a chicken and egg thing, right? Okay, I'll make you all this non-woven if you give me a letter of intent or a contract that says you'll use it. Okay, I'll give you a contract if you can prove to me that you can make it. And it's a little bit of a problem right now, and it's going to take a couple of years, but the investment opportunity is out there. So right now we know how to make it. We've worked in non-wovens before. We know and the Europeans have done it for 20 years, right? I mean, some of the biggest uses of fiber hemp over in Europe is for these insulating panels. So it just, all the tumblers have to come together, right? So that the economic opportunities there, the supply chain awareness is there, and it makes, again, more demand for the product, which gives farmers more opportunity. And that's what we're trying to do. I mean, we grow food very efficiently, thank goodness, right, in the United States, and that's good. But you also need to keep having more opportunity for continued revenue streams, or else we're going to get to the point where it's we won't, a lot of farms won't be able to survive during these different boom and busts of different commodities. So.
Absolutely, no, I definitely, in terms of jumping back to the farming side and revenue streams. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like, I mean, obviously, when you're growing hemp, you're either growing it for cannabinoids, you're growing it for grain, or you're growing it for fiber. There's some dual-purpose crops out there, but they're a little iffy in terms of whether or not they'll really be major game players. But things like the fiber, if you're growing for fiber, you could potentially, I mean, this would obviously kind of take that you'd have to have supply chains set up for the material to go down those supply chains, but you could potentially sell it into multiple different industries. Versus just having one specific industry to sell it to. Am I correct kind of in saying that? Like if the automobile industry were to tank a little bit, like you could sell it into other transportation industries or things like that?
Oh, absolutely. The trouble is supply chain awareness in a lot of industries, right? So we've made hundreds of calls over the last couple of years, and here's how it usually goes. Like, oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah, we heard about hemp. It's cool. And everybody's very positive on it. But then, to have it get into the scale up, it's like, okay, well, explain to me how you can deliver, 10,000 pounds of parent roll at this spec. Well, I can't yet, but if you were interested in it, we'd get it going. It's like, okay, well, when you have that parent roll, send one to me and I'll be happy to use it, right? So then you go to financiers, right? You go to, whether it's private equity or whether you go to venture capitalists, which, they go, okay, love the idea. We like being on the new stuff. We like the technology. Show me the market. Because, there's nobody's going to invest unless you say, well, I've got, XYZ car company committed to buying 500 rolls of this stuff, parent rolls, big 8 foot diameter, 12 foot long, parent rolls. So it's you've got to find the three people that have the power in the supply chain to go, yes, yes, even though we use this, I want to try this. So in a year, I want you to deliver me this, and by the way, here's a commitment, and here's some funding. And then you can go to a venture capitalist or a private equity organization and go, look, I've got XYZ company. They're interested in this stuff. I need this to get going, because this is not small capital.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you know, I appreciate all the investment programs that are out there, you know, folks trying to help with, but those are $20,000, $50,000, $100,000
They're not
deals.
going to go very far.
I'm talking
Millions.
20 million, 100 million. You know, we've got some we've been talking to a lot of people about, look, I'm looking for $100 million,
Yep.
and we're going to make you know, a hemp processing system that kicks out these 4 products and build upon that. But to get people to buy into okay, I'm good with the $100 million and we understand what you're doing. There's the pieces. It's like, yeah, we understand all the technology exists. You just have to get it put together. Here's the other problem. As great as all the regulatory support has been, it's not without risk.
Yeah.
And when you're putting $100,000 at risk, yeah, that's, you know, okay.
Something.
But yeah, on the whim of policy change, if you're in the middle of a $100 million 2-year plant build, and all of a sudden in the middle, somebody says, you know, regulatory direction changes, it's like, ooh, you know, and companies that invest that amount of money have responsibility to their whether it's shareholders or limited partners or whatever. So the diligence has to be done such that the policy is stable, and the policy is not quite stable yet. Now, you could make an argument that grain and fiber hemp having been exempt, you know, what are you worried about? Well, here's what you're worried about. You still have to have a license. You still have to do testing, right? It's not like it's corn, even though everybody says, you know, a couple of years ago, oh yeah, hemp is just an agricultural commodity like corn. Okay, well, you know what? When I grow corn, I don't have to go out and have a test result and sweat whether the lab actually can, you know, give me an accurate result. Yeah. I mean, you know, so if you're going to make fiber and grain an agricultural commodity, then absolutely get rid of all the limitations and the policy. You know, well, not only testing, but the instability in the in the policy, right? Yeah, okay. Extracts, I get it, you know, because it's pharmaceutical, it's going into people's bodies. It has to be a whole different story.
Yeah, but grain and fiber,
industrial, right?
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous to have. I mean, like, definitely there may be aspects of some grain and fiber plants going hot if somebody is breeding it from a marijuana plant or something, but pretty much all the grain and fiber crops I know out there are like testing 0.03, which with the limit of 0.3, it's like it's a tenth or less of it. So it's definitely, it is kind of ridiculous to see that. But yeah, no, it is very challenging to I mean, like, setting up any new product or product line. It's definitely very challenging, as you were saying, when you have to kind of convince somebody that's maybe, as you said, like building 500,000 cars every single year, to start testing the waters with the material, so you can actually see if it's really gonna stick, it's really gonna work. I mean, like, they can probably do like one-off cars and some concept cars and such, but to actually put something in production, it's more likely that you're going to find like a really small scale car company to maybe do something like that, but then they're also not going to have the capital flow, and they're not going to have the resources to really be able to target something like that, right?
Right. And luckily we're working with a smaller car company that's into it, but you know, if we're going to make this a real industry, if we're going to have 2 million, 5 million acres across the country of row crop hemp that really starts to make a difference, we need to come to grips with stabilize the policy that allows the pursuit of capital to not be hindered by the diligence that has to occur so that those funds can put money into longer term and larger opportunities. So
absolutely, yeah. You need to be able to put an investment plan in place for 5 years down the road, so that you can.
right. It's look, and it's in. We've started a bunch of companies and we've exited. It's 7 years. People have got to realize.
Yeah.
You start on a journey, right? The project part of a new company is probably 2 years of talking and finding the financing, 3 years to build out what you're going to build out, and 2 years to stabilize it so it's operational, right?
Yeah.
And the trick is to get to operationalization. What that is I can count on this much material, I can count on this supply chain, I can count on having this type of sales channel a throughput, right? So at 7 years, if you take $100 million and you build a plant and you create a company and you're starting to get that back with good cash flow, 7 years in. So these types of investors need to have the confidence that policy is going to remain stable for not only 7 years, but 10, beyond that as well.
15, 20 years. Absolutely.
And look, it's just not stable right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So like in your mind, in terms of that, obviously there's going to be a whole bunch of factors to really stabilize it. I mean, not at this point in time, not even every state necessarily has a full-fledged program. But is it really at this point in time for specifically fiber and grain, or even specifically fiber, is it really the testing standards and that kind of stuff that needs to change really to kind of stabilize it out, or are there other factors that kind of need to be stabilized at this point?
So I think you have to separate the non ingestible or non-human consumption or non-animal consumption production from the truly industrial hemp to take advantage of materials, right? Industrial hemp materials, there's no reason to, if you're growing for fiber, and if there was some way, and there is, to know that the genetics are not capable of producing THC, which is what they're worried about, right? Then treat it like corn, right? That's it. Sell the seeds. Don't control it. Don't have the testing, right? Versus if you're going to do CBD or CBG or any of the cannabinoids, where there is always going to be some ratio of the targeted cannabinoid to the THC, because everything comes from CBG, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's been some studies, fantastic studies, that say, look, the genetics will tell you whether this stuff's going to go hot or not. Yeah. So using the results of those studies and the body of work that's going to build on those studies, let's have the system such that we know that these particular cultivars do not have the capability to convert the CBG into THC. Yeah. So if you want to grow industrial hemp for materials, use these that we know that have the markers. I mean, they're identified, and relax all the frustration of the instability on that side of the equation. Yeah. On the pharma side, on the dietary supplement side, on the human consumption, animal consumption side, okay, I get it. There's a whole bunch of stuff that has to be worked out, and there's a lot of money over there, right? I mean, that's where all the money is right now. The CBD, the CBG. I mean, the hot topic this year is CBG. Everybody wants to grow for CBG now, right? Okay. And of course, there's still that group of folks in the general population that think all of hemp is just a big smokescreen for trying to legalize marijuana all over the place, right? So
even though marijuana in many cases is not necessarily the enemy of hemp, but kind of is competing against hemp in many fields.
Well, as a society, we just have to get over a few things. We have more important things to worry about than folks worrying about whether hemp is being grown for marijuana. But that, I don't want to even get into the
Marijuana
social
discussion.
politics.
Absolutely.
What I'd love to do
Mm-hmm.
is see some stability on the industrial hemp material side, because look, we can make get carbon into batteries. We
Yep.
can get fiber
Yep.
into nonwovens and into hard surface materials,
Composites.
oriented strand board, right?
Okay.
I mean, what a fantastic thing. Stop cutting down the trees, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's just grow hemp. We could grow so much hemp that we could take advantage of oriented strand board. Hempcrete, right? I mean, hempcrete, take the herds, the middle of the plant, right? And grind it and mix it with lime and I get that concrete has its place. I mean, the world is built out of concrete. We're not going to hurt the concrete industry, right?
Absolutely.
But what we are going to do, again, if we take 10% of
the current market,
concrete, 10% of concrete applications as things grow, the concrete guys get to grow their concrete, usage, but hempcrete now, it starts pulling down, clinkers. When you make clinkers, right, which is the precursor to concrete, right?
Okay.
The precursor to cement, right? I mean, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of, it puts a lot of stuff in the atmosphere, and we need it. I'm not saying but if it's just like wind energy, right?
Yeah.
We still need coal. We still need nuclear. We still need natural gas. But as wind expands, right, as the whole thing grows, you start building on the stuff that's more sustainable. So let's make hempcrete has some great applications for some things that we could replace concrete with, right? Not all of it, but some of it. And you start building the market, you get 1%, 2%, 5%, and in 30 years, you do enough of this stuff. You got 5 million acres of hemp. You got 10% of the new concrete applications are hempcrete. You've got 10% of the carbon that's going in the battery anodes is hemp carbon. You got 10% of the particle board or the oriented strand board that's coming from trees in the hemp. You save the other resources of the planet, and you start making a difference. Hemp's that material, right? That's what's so great about it. And I get that the 25,000 uses. Okay, fine. but what we need is the 10 products that actually will make a difference. And these are some of the ones. I mean, the cannabinoids, right? The extracts are going to make a difference in a lot of stuff. And I could make some great, hemp cold pressed oil products, right? The fatty acid profiles are fantastic, right? But we need to start making a difference through the high volume industrial uses. Let's face it, right? I think there was a study last year that said all the cannabinoid consumption that has been established across the United States from the early adopters, and now it's stabilizing to the repeat users. We grew like 8 times the amount of hemp flower needed for that market last year.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, the only way that's going to go right now is people are going to stop growing hemp because the price is not there. Well, what's going to bring hemp's volume up is the industrial uses, right?
Yeah.
I want, my vision is 1 million acres in northern New York of row crop hemp that just goes into my $100 million plant, $100 million processing facility that kicks out carbon, kicks out fiber, kicks out hempcrete, and kicks out other products that we'll come up with, and just make it just course of business. It's like in 30 years, I want to look back and say, hemp. Of course it's hemp. Why wouldn't you use hemp?
Thank you very much for joining us here on WhatCannaRadio. If you enjoyed what you heard and you'd like to hear more, please consider smashing that like button below and subscribing to our channel so you can be the first to know when we release new content. If you enjoyed the video so much that you'd like to watch another right this moment, check out our video right here. Or if you'd like to see what YouTube is offering to you, check out the videos over here or down below. Thank you very much for joining us and have yourselves a wonderful day.